You can probably tell a difference between an okay average graphic design and then a superior design. But what is the missing piece to the puzzle? What processes and what skills bridge the gap from average to superior? Now here's a magazine cover, and despite it being aligned well, having a strong obvious color scheme, and the typography being half decent, this design is actually only average. What I'm going to say now is really quite important, so you might want to take some notes on this one. For any design, you can effectively split things up into two different categories. In the first mindset, you have the principal technicals of the design itself, and then the other one would be the psychological language and theory. Tackling the first category, the principles, the first issue holding back this design is that the focal point fails to make an impact. And that's something crucial for magazines to actually have, to be impacting visually speaking. But the next technical problem is the lack of contrast. Sure, we have a hard contrast of beige and blue as the color scheme, and also some contrast of typography as well, but the design feels very flat and likely won't catch your eye if it's on a shelf. The third offense from a technical standpoint is the layout. It's quite neat, but it fails to direct and cause an impact. But what about that second category, that psychological side of this whole theory? You see, this is where a truly superior design shows itself. When you're making a design, you need to consider the audience and how your design can appeal to them psychologically speaking. The first design is a fashion magazine, and fashion is always evolving, it's up to date, it's fast paced, it's loud, and it's in your face. Does this design suggest those things to you? Do the design choices scream up-to-date fashion? No, the design is very rigid looking, which isn't helped by the horizontal color block layout. And the layout itself is very generic and general, and its design doesn't help evoke the feelings or emotions that a typical reader of a fashion magazine wants to see. That's the key missing part of the puzzle here, and it's what bridges the gap from an average design to a superior design. And so let's see what that looks like and why it works. The second design is for Vogue, which of course almost everybody is aware of. First of all, let's tick off the fundamental principles that the first design failed to achieve. Do we have a strong, impacting focal point? We sure do. The female model is taking up a large portion of the central area of the design itself, and she has on a bright orange dress that totally steals the show and makes an impact. More about that when we look at the psychological aspects. Now, contrast. Where is the contrast on this design? Well, her dress is orange, and the background and typography are easily contrasted with this color. Also, there is a clear contrast of size seen here too. But did you notice the next principle? There is also a subtle but a perfect use of flow on this design. Whereas the first design seemed static and rigid, this one has some really good flow about it. Now we can start visually at the top with the title or her head. We then move down her body with her right vertical arm and torso, or perhaps down her left arm too, which is angular. And then we move down to the bottom. It's a very easy and a very natural journey, and that's compared to the rigid design we saw earlier. But yeah, what about those psychological areas? Vogue cover designs have done something for years and years and years, and that is to partially obscure their logo with a model or something else. This looks avant-garde, it's daring, it's fun, it's fashionable. It also shows how strong their brand is, but importantly, it's not rigid. Fashion is anything but rigid. We can also see that in the text for nostalgia at the very bottom, which is also very experimental. This plays into the psychology of fashion and those who are involved with it. It's out of the box, or moreover, it completely reinvents the box. The typeface choices also align with the exclusive group of people who consider themselves to be in the know when it comes to fashion. But here, of course, on this Vogue design, those typography choices are decided by Vogue themselves, and quite rightly so. What I'm going to show you right now totally blew my mind as a graphic designer. This is StylarAi, and not only is it totally free to try out and use right now, it's actually a hugely powerful image generation tool that is pretty much unparalleled out there in the industry right now. And there have been some recent groundbreaking updates. Firstly, check this out. In the text image box, I can describe a design that I want to generate or a style. That's pretty standard across image AI tools. But now, when we stylarize, we can choose to create a style. This means that any new image we create, we will use our created style, which you will soon see to be hugely powerful. So it's going to generate 4 different outcomes, and then we can simply double click one to bring it onto the canvas. But here's the cool part. Like I mentioned, we can come in and generate a totally different prompt. For example, here a sumo wrestler standing in the street. And then when we go to stylarize the prompt, all generations will be the same style that we have created. Now this is awesome for work on projects that have a strict style or visual language. And just look how crisp, how clean, and how stylish these sumos are. I'm actually really impressed with these images. But there's one more quick and highly useful update, and that is the Generative Expand tool. Now you likely know what this is. We can expand the edges of our design to new scales and dimensions simply by clicking and dragging the edges. But just watch how perfectly the AI manages to do that. We have 2 different designs to choose from, and they look really stunning. And if you want to try out StylarAi for free, simply click the link in the description box below. And thanks to them for sponsoring this section of today's video. So we're going to look at another example, and then after that, we're going to go through the process on a real design step by step so you can fully cement this idea, this theory, this teaching into your design brain. Let's look at this website banner and inspect it properly. One thing you need to keep in mind about any design project you walk into is context and the design's job. When considering a website banner, it needs to grab attention and then funnel people to a link or whatever. With that in mind, from a technical point of view, the first issue with this banner is weak visuals. I mean, just look at it. How inspiring and attention grabbing is this design? Not very much, if at all. And also, what is on sale? There's no product images or anything to suggest what is actually on sale. And the word sale itself is almost unreadable. Secondly, the CTA or call to action is very, very weak. It looks similar to the other text, which itself for a website banner is just too bland. This banner would fail in a big way if used on a website to direct people to a sales page. That much is pretty obvious. But psychologically speaking, does this appeal to an audience? A sale or a shop now banner needs to be engaging, exciting, maybe even shocking. The colors used do not trigger the audience, and the fonts used and visuals do not align with the mentality of a person who might be ushered towards a sales page. But then we look at the superior design, and it's obvious that things are drastically different here. Technically, this design works perfectly as a website banner. Remember, as designers, we need to consider the context and the job of the design too. This banner needs to grab attention and to funnel people, as we mentioned earlier. And technically, it manages to grab attention by being, firstly, bright orange, but also by having a strong focal point right slap bang in the middle. Also, the title or the shop name is really, really obvious. If you were to compare the performance of this banner to the other one for a week on a website, I'm sure this one would make at least 500% more clicks, at the very least. And speaking of clicks, look how obvious and clean the CTA is on the right. You cannot miss it due to the space around it and by the color and the shape contrast. But again, what about the psychological side of this design? Now we can assume this is an urban clothing or fashion brand trying to get sales. And so having the model here bleed out of the rectangle looks both engaging and modern. Typography choice aligns with the psychology of the typical customer of this brand. And the bright orange can be seen as energetic, which creates action or movement to whoever sees it. And that would possibly lead to them actually taking action in the sense of clicking the shop now link. This is of course color psychology. But to put everything we've talked about into real action, let's work on an actual design together to see how things fit together in real workflow situations. So here's a design for a giant billboard, the kind you'd see on the side of a busy road or even perhaps down on the metro or the subway system. Now what makes this design average? What is holding it back from being superior and really effective in what it aims to do? My immediate thought is that it's too cluttered. The design is simply too busy and a little all over the place, so to speak. It's as if the designer, or maybe the client telling the designer, has to use up as much space as possible. And this is something I see in the comment section from time to time. Clients who tell you to fill up all of the space on the design, or maybe the clients who give you existing designs and tell you that you have to design something basically the same as that. These are the more lower tier clients. These kind of people, they want a quick turnaround for often not so much money. And as you climb up the client ladder, these things won't happen to you anymore. You won't hear clients saying these things to you. But I digress. This design also lacks a strong sense of branding or visual language. The typography pairing doesn't seem to fit well, and the design doesn't look like it ties together neatly in a clear-cut visual language. And we're soon going to change that, of course. So let's start with a blank canvas, or moreover, a very light grey. And for the design itself, let's lose that naff image or that picture that looks like it's taped onto the design. I know that we often have to use media given to us by the client, but let's assume we have multiple images to work with, or better yet, freedom of choice. And that is sometimes the case, especially as you work your way up the client ladder in your career. Now I'm just going to bring on some typography and a bold lime green initially. I'm actually feeling like title case is a good way to go instead of full uppercase here. And we are using a modern sans serif to go along with that psychology of the audience, that being young, trendy types. The lime green also plays into that too. As the typography stands right now, I don't like having 2 paragraphs of text laid out like this below the title. The original design also had 2 blocks of text, but I want to make one of these paragraphs a little more interesting and a bit different. This also neatens up the composition as well. Now I've desaturated the model so that the important information and the bold color stands out more so, but I do toy with this idea later. So here I've changed the motif to purple to contrast the green and to simply just stand out. And I've also added a thin black bar to the left to unite the composition together. But finally, I landed on having the shop now icon as purple and kept the text to the left in the black and white. The visual language of this design is trendy, it's minimal, clean and modern. I've balanced the information on the left with the focal point model and lime green to the right, and that just makes it a lot easier on the eye when viewing the design itself. But I'm still kind of unsure if things look better with a desaturated model or full color. But also the desaturation could suggest that the current outfit that she's wearing needs to be updated, and this will play into the concept of the design as a whole. But the key thing is to see the problems with the average design from a technical point of view, and then aim to solve those problems and create a strong visual language into your design that targets an audience. And then you simply end up with a more superior design. But if you'd like to learn some more key essential skills and knowledge as a graphic designer, just click that video on screen. But until next time guys, design your future today. Peace.